803 interceptor missiles were burned in the Middle East in 24 hours, while the United States produces only 65 Patriot missiles a month. A $3,000 Ukrainian drone algorithm is now the only thing saving the West's billion-dollar ballistic stockpiles. Why are Gulf oil billionaires suddenly turning their backs on the shiny, heavily marketed weapons of Beijing to buy lines of code smelling of gunpowder from underground bunkers in Kiev? The answer is not political sympathy. It is pure, ruthless battlefield mathematics. For years, the global defense market operated on sterile brochure statistics. China tried to dominate the region by selling the Wing-Lung unmanned aerial vehicles and the Silent Hunter laser systems to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They promised high tech without Western political strings attached. But the elite military planners of the Gulf were hit with a harsh reality check on March 18, 2026. Paper statistics do not intercept swarms of Shahed 136 suicide drones raining down on oil refineries. This brings us to the ultimate strategic slap in the face. The UAE-based defense conglomerate, Edge Group, just locked in a $1 billion technical cooperation deal with Ukrainian manufacturers, officially kicking Chinese sterile lab products off the Middle Eastern chessboard. What the Gulf states are purchasing is not just hardware. They are buying a combat-proven immune system. Ukrainian engineers reverse-engineered the infrared signatures and flight algorithms of Iranian drones directly under artillery fire. When a Saudi Aramco facility deploys the P-1 Sun, or the Phantom electronic warfare system today, they are utilizing combat data harvested from the bloody trenches of Eastern Europe. Every time an Iranian-built drone changes its frequency to avoid jamming, the Ukrainian Phantom system adapts in milliseconds because it has seen this exact evasion tactic thousands of times over the skies of Donbass. We are witnessing the death of laboratory defense industries. You cannot simulate the chaos of a 300-drone swarm attack in a Beijing testing facility. By injecting 3 elite military expert teams directly into Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, Kiev has transformed its own survival instinct into the most lucrative defense export of the decade. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, spent decades perfecting the doctrine of asymmetric warfare. Their entire geopolitical leverage relied on a single, ruthless equation: overwhelming the advanced air defenses of their adversaries with cheap, expendable numerical superiority. But the Ukrainian electronic warfare algorithms deployed across the Gulf have mathematically shattered this axis of resistance. We are witnessing the total collapse of the proxy swarm doctrine. When your primary asymmetric weapon, the Shahed suicide drone, gets picked out of the sky by a localized frequency jammer before it even crosses the coastline, panic sets in at the command level. This brings us to the real-time tactical shift unfolding right now. Having lost the airspace advantage, Tehran has been forced into a corner. As of March 17, 2026, battlefield intelligence confirmed that Iran frantically escalated its offensive by firing 314 heavy ballistic missiles into the UAE and surrounding defense zones. This is not a show of strength. It is an act of economic suicide. You cannot mass-produce a Fateh 110 or a Sejjil ballistic missile in a garage. These are highly complex multi-million-dollar platforms requiring precision guidance chips that are heavily sanctioned. Furthermore, this desperate shift in firepower destroys Tehran's greatest strategic shield: plausible deniability. A low-flying drone launched from a desert in Yemen by Houthi militants allows the regime to hide behind proxies. However, a heavy ballistic missile creates a massive thermal bloom upon ignition. Space-based infrared systems detect the launch instantly, tracing the trajectory directly back to underground silos deep within Iranian territory. Ukraine's localized interceptors have effectively stripped the mask off the Iranian proxy network, dragging the regime out of the shadows. To bypass this newly established electronic iron dome, Iran would need to invest billions into next-generation artificial intelligence and anti-jamming stealth technology. For an economy crushed by international sanctions, that is a mathematical impossibility. Consequently, military analysts are now tracking a highly dangerous pivot. Since the aerial route is choked off, The IRGC is shifting its resources toward asymmetric naval operations. Satellite imagery from this week shows increased mine-laying preparations around the Strait of Hormuz and a surge in cyber warfare units targeting desalination infrastructure. The Ukrainian Shield did not just stop the drones, it forced an entire hostile nation to rewrite its military playbook overnight. Let us examine the grand chessboard. The billions of dollars flowing into Ukrainian defense firms from the Middle East are just the surface layer of a much deeper operation. The real genius of Kiev's strategy lies in a concept military analysts are now calling barter diplomacy. While Saudi Arabia and the Emirates deploy thousands of Ukrainian interceptor drones to protect their critical oil infrastructure, a massive shadow logistics network is quietly unfolding under the radar. For decades, Gulf nations hoarded extensive stockpiles of American-made PAC-2 and PAC-3 interceptor missiles. Before the Ukrainian electronic shield arrived, firing a top-tier PAC-3 to shoot down a cheap loitering munition was the only viable option, rapidly draining those strategic reserves. Now, with Kiev's defense sector churning out 2,000 interceptor drones a day, allocating 1,000 to the Donbass front, and exporting the rest to the Gulf, the tactical equation has entirely flipped. The Gulf states no longer need to waste their high-tier interceptors on low-tier aerial threats. This newly created surplus has opened the door for unprecedented trilateral swap agreements brokered behind closed doors. Intelligence reports from mid-March 2026 indicate that the Pentagon has already greenlit the quiet transfer of several PAC-2 and PAC-3 batteries from Middle Eastern bases directly back to Eastern Europe. This logistical masterstroke delivers a devastating blow to the Russian aerospace forces. Over the past 72 hours, Moscow has intensified its spring bombardment, launching relentless waves of Kh-47 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles and Iskander ballistic systems at the Ukrainian energy grid. However, instead of finding exhausted defenses, Russian commanders are suddenly flying their multi-million-dollar assets into a reinforced iron wall. Vladimir Putin spent years aggressively courting OPEC+ leaders in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, hoping to fill the geopolitical vacuum left by Washington and position Moscow as the ultimate security guarantor. Instead, the exact opposite has occurred. Russian military prestige has been swallowed whole by the very nation they invaded. Gulf capital is now effectively underwriting the survival of the Ukrainian defense industry, while Arab-owned Patriot systems are quietly shipped to the front lines to destroy Russian aviation. Kiev is not simply exporting a defense product, they are executing the most sophisticated diplomatic extraction operation of the 21st century. They have successfully weaponized their own battlefield survival instinct, turning Arab oil money into an impenetrable defensive umbrella for the skies of Ukraine. Let us widen the lens to understand the massive macroeconomic shockwaves generated by this technological barrier. For years, the global economy has been held hostage by a single, critical vulnerability: the fragile energy arteries of the Middle East. Historically, a successful precision strike on a massive processing plant like Saudi Arabia's Abqaiq facility sent global oil prices soaring overnight, creating crushing inflationary pressures across Europe and the Americas. The relentless threat of severing these vital supply chains hung over the global markets like the sword of Damocles, giving Tehran unparalleled leverage. However, the rapid deployment of Ukrainian combat algorithms has completely neutralized this geopolitical blackmail. By establishing an impenetrable electronic shield over the extraction infrastructure of the Gulf, Kiev has inadvertently become the ultimate guarantor of global energy security. Financial market analysts observing the data in mid-March 2026 have noted a remarkable phenomenon. Despite the intense regional hostilities and the aggressive posturing of the Islamic Republic, the geopolitical risk premium traditionally baked into the price of Brent crude oil has steadily declined. The global energy supply chain remains uninterrupted simply because the newly installed swarm defense architecture is holding the line without fail. This economic reality presents a catastrophic strategic failure for the alliance between Moscow and Tehran. The Russian Federation has historically weaponized energy supplies, relying heavily on Middle Eastern instability to drive up the value of its own heavily sanctioned oil exports. By securing the facilities of the largest Arab producers, Ukraine is actively suppressing the exact market volatility that funds the Russian war machine. Every barrel of oil safely pumped from the Persian Gulf dilutes the financial leverage of the Kremlin. The very battlefield in Eastern Europe that originally highlighted the terrifying potential of suicide drones is now exporting the absolute mathematical antidote to the rest of the world. Furthermore, the technological shift currently forced upon the Middle East is accelerating the collapse of traditional military hierarchies. During the 1991 Gulf War, the deployment of American anti-missile batteries to counter Scud missiles cemented Washington's security hegemony in the region for over 3 decades. Today, that dominance is being entirely rewritten. Security in the modern era is no longer defined by who can park the largest nuclear aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. It is defined by who possesses the most adaptable, fiercely battle-tested code. By checkmating hostile proxy networks at their own game of asymmetric warfare, Kiev is actively reshaping the international security architecture. A powerful survival instinct, forged in the trenches, has achieved an absolute victory over sheer brute force. The ultimate verdict on this geopolitical earthquake is crystal clear. The era of the multi-billion-dollar static defense infrastructure is officially dead. We have entered the unforgiving age of algorithmic warfare, where a nation's survival depends entirely on the speed at which its software engineers can update combat codes under artillery fire. Looking ahead to the summer offensive of 2026, military intelligence agencies are projecting a radical shift in global arms procurement. The Middle East will no longer be a passive buyer of Western or Eastern hardware. Instead, it has actively transformed into a massive, live-fire testing ground for Ukrainian electronic warfare systems. The Islamic Republic is now racing against the clock. Having lost their asymmetric swarm advantage, Iranian commanders are desperately attempting to integrate crude artificial intelligence and autonomous optical targeting into their next-generation munitions. However, without access to high-tier microchips due to crushing international sanctions, this desperate pivot is nothing more than a strategic dead end. They are locked in a technological death spiral, bleeding resources they simply do not have. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation finds itself trapped in a geopolitical nightmare of its own making. The very algorithms developed to defend Kyiv are now guarding the oil wealth of the Arab world, effectively neutralizing Moscow's ability to manipulate global energy markets and fund its war machine. The absolute irony of this conflict is that by attempting to conquer its neighbor, the Kremlin inadvertently forged the most lethal, battle-hardened defense industry on the European continent. Ukraine has permanently evolved from a besieged nation into a premier exporter of global security architectures. This is not just a localized tactical victory. It is a permanent realignment of the military-industrial complex. The pure survival instinct has outmaneuvered the sterile laboratory. The muddy trenches have completely defeated the pristine testing grounds. Now, we want to hear your intelligence assessment on this shifting paradigm. How long do you calculate the Iranian proxy network can actually survive under this newly established electronic iron dome? Drop your tactical analysis in the comments section below. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate all notifications to ensure you receive our real-time battlefield reports the second they are declassified. Stay sharp and stay informed on the front lines of the 21st century.